Hello, my name's Matt and I'm the Ranger of Stroud Town Council. I'm here with my friend Chloe at Bisley Old Road Cemetery, the local nature reserve in Stroud. We're here to look at what's around us growing today, the flowers, the butterflies and whatever we come across. We had intended to do quite a series of guided walks, and due to the COVID-19 situation, those have had to cancel. So we're doing this as a sort of replacement to show you the kind of thing we would have done, and so as you know that we're still here, we're still doing stuff, and we hope to go again next year. The overall habitat is calcareous grassland. It's unimproved because it was a cemetery, so it's really rich in wildflowers and therefore invertebrates that live off of those flowers. So we should see some interesting butterflies like the marbled white. They've just started emerging. We should see some nice flowers that are associated with that habitat that have specific butterflies associated with them. Hopefully I'll show you those as we go around. It's also, if we're lucky enough, we could see some reptiles. There's 4 species of reptiles living here, and that's really quite remarkable for a semi-urban nature reserve. We have here a really nice patch of kidney vetch. It's a calcareous specialist, a bit like the bird's foot trefoil we saw. It's actually a member of the pea family, the flower, but it has these little woolly growths around the base of the flower and where the seed forms. And this is where the larvae of the small blue butterfly live. They actually mimic this growth and are very hard to spot. And we do have a very small colony of small blue butterfly associated with these, living right here. Hi, I'm sat again amongst all these lovely wild flowers, and it's the calcareous specialist flowers generally. And there's one here that you will see in the border areas other than calcareous grassland, that's limestone soils. This is the bird's foot trefoil. It's a great plant for wildlife. Lots of invertebrates live off of this. Lots of butterflies and moths associated with it. Trefoil is free-leaved, and the bird's foot is actually this part of the seed casings. As they go over, they look a little bit like a talon or a bird's foot. So that's its common name. A lot of people know it locally or in other areas as eggs and bacon because of the sort of reddish flowers as they start and then the yellow. There's a nice butterfly associated with that, some of the skipper butterflies, the grizzled skipper and some of the other skipper butterflies. Next to it, with a lovely plant that's very much a calcareous specialist and quite common in your gardens as well, because this is marjoram, just about to come into flower, has a lovely scent if you crush the leaves, and when it's really flowering, the butterflies just go crazy for it. We also have this nice white flower in front of it here. This is hedge bedstraw and one of the galliums, and that grows profusely around here. Interesting little grass as well. I don't know if you can get this on the camera, but this is quaking grass. So if I touch that and shake it a little bit, you can see that the grass moves, and you do get some really big ornamental varieties of that in the garden, but that's a calcareous specialist grass. So we've got a garden chafer beetle here. Their larvae live off the roots of plants, and some years we have vast numbers of these emerging on some of our sites, almost sort of a swarm kind of thing. This year they're actually in very low numbers, and I assume that's because it's just been so dry. Right, we've some lovely greater knapweed flower in here. It's a terrific plant. It's just starting to come into flower. It's really a late summer flowering plant, and here on the nature reserve at Bisley Old Road Cemetery, it's quite important because in late summer sometimes there isn't that many flowers still flowering, and we get a lot of knapweed and a lot of field scabious, which are fantastic nectar sources for a whole range of invertebrates, bees, butterflies, and you frequently see the marbled white butterfly using those flowers along with the 6-spot burnet moth, the black and red moth that is quite common in summer in these beautiful meadows. So I'm here sat amongst lots of the wildflowers just below the chapel, and here's some lovely yellow rattle, some still flowering here, but we also have it going over and starting to form the rattles. These are the seed casings that actually form the rattle, and you do actually hear a seed rattling in that, and that's how it disperses its seed. Yellow rattle's really quite an interesting plant because it's semi-parasitic of grasses, so this is actually living partially off the roots of the grass, and it's often considered advantageous in a wild meadow because it suppresses the grasses and allows more niches for other wildflowers. We have this lovely salad burnet here. It's a member of the rose family, little pinkish flowers that are nodding away there. But it has this very beautiful leaf, and if you crush the leaves, you don't need to pick much to do so, and it grows quite well. But if you crush the leaves, it actually smells like cucumber, and it's very nice, I'm told, in a gin and tonic or a glass of Pimm's. This is a plant that's a specialist of calcareous soils, so you get it on chalky or limestone soils. So we've got some dark mullein growing here, lovely yellow flower on this spike. They're normally quite a bit bigger than this, but it's such a dry year, they're quite short this year. Now, this little fellow we have down here is the mullein moth caterpillar. So he's feeding away there on mullein. You can see he's left quite a little bit of excrement on that leaf, but he's a very brightly coloured caterpillar. So that, of course, is a bit of a defence, so as the birds don't eat him, because he's sort of telling them he's not going to taste nice, he might be unpleasant entirely. But a very colourful caterpillar, and it may get quite a bit bigger than that before it will pupate. So here we have a little common lizard that's more or less fully grown, the example here. If I could see close to the underside, I'd be able to tell you whether it is male or female. But it's actually using the black stone curbing of an old grave there to just bask and warm up, because of course these are reptiles and are therefore cold-blooded. There's a lot of common lizards in this area. They like this deep, rough grass with areas to bask like this. There's 4 species of reptile that live here. We have adders that are very endangered, and we hope to hold on to them, but we don't know because there's very few left and they're very susceptible to disturbance. There's the common lizard, which the young of which is probably what the adders live off of mostly, that and small mammals. And then we've a lot of slowworms and quite a lot of grass snakes. The grass snakes I find quite remarkable because they're usually associated with damper conditions, and it's usually very dry here because we're on south-facing banks, and it's limestone substrate, which means it's free draining and very dry. But it's why it's good for wildflowers. It's also the south facing is why it's good for reptiles, because it's nice and warm. So here we have lots of slowworms. These are mainly females. I'm just going to pop this down gently because I don't want to disturb them any more than that. Okay, here I have quite a nice mature, more or less mature, male slowworm. So he's just starting to get to the stage where he might have the blue spots that the really big males tend to get. Makes them quite nice moving. So of course the slowworm is actually a lizard without legs. They evolved to lose their legs because they spend most of the time either underground or really down in the vegetative humic layer, and that's where they tend to be. We used to have tins down for the reptiles, but too many people were looking under them. And so we took them away, because particularly for the adders, and there's always the chance that people just step on them and squash whatever's underneath. This plant I have here is common broomrape, and the reason why it's like bird's nest orchid is there's no chlorophyll in this plant, so there's no green, and that's because it's not photosynthesizing.
So is it parasitic?
It's completely parasitic, yeah. So we saw yellow rattle earlier. So here we have yellow rattle, which is semi-parasitic of grasses, but it's semi-parasitic, so it's still using chlorophyll, hence the green leaves. This common broomrape is fully parasitic, so that's getting all its energy and nutrients from another plant. In common broomrape can parasitise a number of plants. It might be parasitising bird's foot trefoil, which we've talked about here. It commonly parasitises clover. So we've got clover here, so it's probably parasitising the clover. Related species, both pea family. But this is a slightly older spike here. They go brown very quickly, and when they first emerge, they do have this nice pinkish hue. So here we're looking at some pyramidal orchids. They're quite small examples, but a lot of things are stunted this year because it's just been so dry. We got to March and we're now into June, and we've hardly had any rain to speak of. So things are flowering and going over very quickly because they've either been pollinated and finished, or some are just drying out. I know one site I was expecting to see a lot of bee orchids and they just disappeared. They've just dried up and decided they won't flower this year. Here, these are pyramidal orchid, which are a classic chalk or calcarious grassland species. Here we're on limestone because we're in the Cotswolds. Nice little cluster of them coming out, and they got the name pyramidal orchid because the flowers open from the bottom up as they grow, and it forms a kind of pyramid. To me it's more of a cone, but they are called pyramidal orchid.